Minji spent her first night on Station Alpha preparing for the biggest challenge of her life. She had dealt with difficult children before, but never with alien warlords who could destroy planets. The station gave her a small meeting room that looked cold and scary with metal walls and bright white lights. She worked all night changing everything. The harsh lights were replaced with soft, warm ones that made the room feel cozy. She brought colorful pictures from Earth showing children playing together and hung them on the walls. She arranged small chairs in a circle just like in her kindergarten classroom back home. The most important thing was the snack table. Minji had spent weeks researching what each alien species could eat safely. She ordered special foods from across the galaxy and arranged them on a low table where everyone could reach easily. She knew from 15 years of teaching that hungry beings were always grumpy beings. The next morning when the 3 alien leaders arrived, they stopped in the doorway and stared. The room looked nothing like the serious diplomatic meeting rooms they were used to. Commander Thex sniffed the air suspiciously with his big nostrils. His red eyes got narrow as he looked at the tiny chairs. "What is this joke?" he growled in his deep, scary voice. "Are we children to be treated like babies in a playground?" Crystal made angry musical sounds that hurt everyone's ears. She floated higher in the air, which was what Nexari did when they felt insulted. "This human mocks us with her primitive decorations. We are ancient beings, not younglings who need pretty pictures." Whisper just floated near the ceiling in his purple gas form. He did not say anything, but his swirling got faster, which meant he was upset. The Flothari delegate had traveled across half the galaxy to save his dying people, and now he was being treated like a child. Minji smiled the same patient smile she used on her first day with new students. She had seen this reaction many times before. Children always tested their teachers to see if they would get angry or give up. But Minji never got angry, and she never gave up. "Please sit anywhere you'd like," she said, in her calm, gentle voice. "I know this looks different from what you're used to, but sometimes different is exactly what we need." Commander Thex stomped over to one of the small chairs. His huge body barely fit, and his knees came up almost to his chin. He looked ridiculous, but somehow the silly position made him seem less scary. Crystal floated down and settled near a chair, though she did not actually sit. Whisper slowly descended from the ceiling but stayed in his gas form. Now Minji began. "Let's start with introductions. I know you all know each other's names and titles, but I want to know about you as people. Tell me about your families, your hobbies, the things that make you happy." The 3 aliens looked at each other in confusion. They had been expecting formal speeches about territorial rights and mining quotas. Instead, this small human wanted to chat about personal things. Commander Thex was the first to speak, because Vorthak warriors never backed down from any challenge. He told them about his 3 sons who were training to be fighters, and his daughter who was the fastest pilot in the fleet. He was proud of his children and wanted them to have a better future than he had. Crystal sang a beautiful song about her crystal garden on the Nexari homeworld, where she grew formations that took centuries to mature. She explained how each crystal had its own voice, and together they made music that could heal sick minds and broken hearts. Whisper talked about the great cloud dances of his people, where thousands of Flothari would swirl together in the sky, making patterns that could be seen from space. He missed those dances because the air on his planet was too dirty now for safe flying. As they talked, Minji listened carefully and asked questions that showed she really cared about their answers. She did not interrupt or judge. She just wanted to understand who they were underneath all the anger and fear. After an hour of sharing, Minji suggested they take a break for snacks. She had learned that food always helped create a friendly atmosphere. The 3 leaders were suspicious at first, but the smell of the carefully chosen foods made them curious. For Commander Thex, she had high-energy meat strips that tasted like the battle rations Vorthak warriors ate before going to war. For Crystal, she had mineral-rich crystal fragments that glowed with soft light and provided the energy Nexari needed to survive. For Whisper, she had compressed nutrient gases in special containers he could absorb through his suit. As they ate something, magical happened. The angry tension in the room began to fade away, just like it did in Minja's classroom when cranky children got their afternoon snack. Commander Thex stopped growling and his eyes stopped glowing red. Crystal stopped making the sharp sounds that hurt people's ears. Whisper stopped swirling so fast and settled into a more relaxed floating pattern. "This is good food," said Commander Thex as he chewed the meat strips. "My younglings would like these. Where did you learn about Vorthak? Nutrition." Minji smiled. "I studied everything I could find about your species. I wanted to make sure you felt welcome here. Just like I learn about each child's favorite foods on the first day of school." Crystal hummed a pleased sound. "These crystals sing with pure energy. You have chosen well, human teacher." "How did you know which frequencies we needed?" I asked experts on your homeworld. Minji replied, "I wanted to understand what would make you comfortable. The same way I ask parents about their children's needs." Whisper spoke in his quiet voice that made everyone lean forward to listen. "These gases taste like home before the sickness came. Thank you for caring about our needs." The three aliens looked at each other with surprise. They had been so focused on fighting that they had forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about their basic needs. This small human had spent time and effort to make sure they were comfortable, fed, and respected. As the second day of meetings continued, Minji did not try to solve their big problem right away. Instead, she kept asking questions about their lives, their cultures, and their fears. She wanted them to see each other as real people, not just enemies. Commander Thex talked about how hard it was to lead an empire that was growing so fast. He worried every night about whether he was making the right choices for millions of people who trusted him. He had nightmares about failing his family and his people. Crystal shared her sadness about watching other species destroy beautiful things without understanding their value. She felt like a guardian of ancient wisdom, but nobody wanted to listen to old songs anymore. Everyone just wanted new technology and fast profits. Whisper described the heartbreak of watching his children struggle to breathe. He had already lost family members to the poisoned air, and he was desperate to save the ones who were still alive. Every day that passed meant more deaths. By the end of the second day, they were no longer shouting at each other. They were still far from agreement, but they were listening. Really listening for the first time in years. Minji had created something that had not existed before, a safe space where enemies could become people again. She looked at the three aliens sitting in their small chairs, sharing their deepest fears and hopes. And she smiled the same smile she used when her kindergarten students finally learned to play together nicely. "Tomorrow," she said gently, "we will start working on solutions. But first we needed to remember that we are all just people trying to take care of the ones we love." The big meeting room on Station Alpha was very noisy that day. 3 different alien groups were shouting at each other and nobody was listening. The walls were shaking from all the angry voices and the floor was covered with broken glass from thrown cups. Ambassador Yuki sat in her chair and watched everything fall apart. She had been trying to fix this problem for 6 months, but nothing worked. The 3 alien species hated each other so much that they could not even stay in the same room without fighting. On one side of the room stood Commander Thex from the Vorthak Empire. He was huge and scary with black scales covering his body and claws that could cut through metal. His red eyes glowed when he got angry, and right now, they were glowing very bright. He kept hitting the table with his big fist and making dents in the strong metal. The Vorthak people looked like giant lizards, but they were much smarter and more dangerous. They had been fighting wars across the galaxy. For hundreds of years, they believed that strong people should take whatever they wanted from weak people. Commander Thex had killed many enemies in battle, and his soldiers were afraid of him, but they also respected him very much. On the other side of the room was a being that looked like a walking crystal. Her name was Resonance of Deep Waters, but everyone just called her Crystal. She was beautiful in a strange way, with light dancing inside her clear body. When she talked, her voice sounded like music, but when she got angry, the sound could break windows. The Nexari people were very old and wise. They had been alive since before humans learned to make fire. They believed that everything in the universe was connected by invisible songs that only they could hear. They thought the asteroids around Kepler 442 were holy places where their ancestors lived as spirits. The third group was the strangest of all. The Flothari delegate looked like a cloud of purple gas floating inside a metal suit. The gas moved and swirled all the time, making different shapes. Nobody could see a face or body, just the moving gas that somehow could think and talk. His name was Whisper, and he spoke so quietly that everyone had to be very quiet to hear him. The Flothari people lived on a planet where the air was like thick soup. They did not have solid bodies like other species. Instead, they were made of gas and energy, but they were just as smart as anyone else. All three groups wanted the same thing. The Kepler 442 star system had lots of asteroids floating around it, and those rocks were full of rare metals that were worth more money than entire planets. The problem was that all three species needed those metals for different reasons, and none of them wanted to share. The Vorthak Empire was growing very fast. They had millions of new babies every year, and they needed more ships and weapons and buildings to keep everyone safe. Commander Thex had promised his people that he would get them the resources they needed to become the strongest empire in the galaxy. The Nexari believed that the asteroids were sacred. They said their ancient songs told them that their greatest heroes had died in battles near those rocks, thousands of years. Ego to them, mining the asteroids would be like digging up a cemetery or destroying a church. They would rather die than let anyone touch their holy places. The Flothari had the most desperate need. Their home planet was dying. The air was becoming poison, and their children could not breathe properly. They needed special metals from the asteroids to build new air machines, or their entire species would disappear forever. Whisper had already lost 2 of his own children to the bad air for 3 years. The fighting had been getting worse. Every month more ships arrived at Kepler 442. Every month there were more battles. Nobody was getting the metals they wanted because they were too busy fighting each other. The space around the asteroids was full of broken ships and floating bodies. The Galactic Council had tried everything. They sent their best diplomats, but the 3 species would not listen. They offered money, but none of the species wanted to sell. They tried to split the system into 3 parts, but each group said they needed all of it, not just a piece. Some council members wanted to send the galactic fleet to force peace, but that would mean a huge war that could destroy entire planets. Others wanted to just let the 3 species fight until they were all dead. But that seemed cruel and wrong. Ambassador Yuki had been watching this disaster for months. She was from a small, peaceful species that did not like fighting. She spent most of her time reading reports about different cultures and trying to understand why people acted the way they did. That was how she learned about humans. Humans were still very new to galactic politics. They had only discovered faster than light travel. 50 years ago, most species thought humans were not very important. They were not the strongest or the smartest or the oldest. They did not have the best technology or the biggest armies. But Yuki had been studying human behavior, and she noticed something very interesting. Humans were extremely good at solving problems that other species could not fix. They had a strange way of thinking that was different from everyone else. She read about human schools and how they taught their children. She learned about something called kindergarten, where very young humans learned basic social skills. The teachers in these schools dealt with conflicts every single day. Children would fight over toys and food and attention, just like the 3 alien species were fighting over the asteroids, but somehow these human teachers could take angry, crying children and help them learn to share and be friends. The teachers did not use force or threats or bribes. They used patience and understanding and clever tricks that made the children want to cooperate. Yuki thought this was very interesting. She wondered if the same methods that worked on human children might work on adult aliens. The idea seemed crazy, but she was desperate to try anything. During the next council meeting, she stood up and made her suggestion. The room got very quiet when she started talking. Most of the other ambassadors respected her, even though her species was not very powerful. "Send a human," she said in her quiet voice. "Not a trained diplomat or a military officer. Send one of their kindergarten teachers." The reaction was immediate. Half the room started laughing. The other half started shouting about how this was not a joke, and they needed serious solutions, not silly games. But Yuki kept talking. Her explained what she had learned about human child psychology and conflict resolution. She showed them videos of human teachers solving disputes between children who were just as stubborn and angry as the 3 alien species. Slowly, the laughter died down. Some of the older ambassadors started nodding their heads. They had tried every traditional approach and nothing worked. Maybe it was time to try something completely different. The debate went on for hours. Some council members said it was insulting to send a child teacher to handle serious adult problems. Others pointed out that serious adult diplomats had already failed completely. Finally, the council president called for a vote. It was very close, but the motion passed by just 3 votes. They would invite a human kindergarten teacher to try solving the Kepler 442 crisis. Within 1 week, a small human transport ship arrived at Station Alpha. The whole station was buzzing with excitement and curiosity. Everyone wanted to see the famous human teacher who was supposed to work miracles. When the airlock opened, a small human woman stepped out. She was not impressive looking at all. She was shorter than most species and had soft features that made her look very young. Her hair was tied back in a simple style, and she wore plain clothes that looked comfortable rather than formal. She carried one small bag and smiled at everyone who was staring at her. Her name was Minji, and she had been teaching 5-year-old humans for 15 years. She looked around the huge metal station with its serious military decorations and diplomatic flags, and her smile got even bigger. "This is going to be fun," she said. The 4th day started differently than the others. Minji arrived carrying a simple wooden stick, decorated with ribbons from 3 different worlds. One ribbon was black and silver like Vorthak battle flags. Another was crystal clear that sang softly when the light hit it just right. The 3rd ribbon moved like gas and changed colors as it floated. She placed the stick in the center of their circle of small chairs and sat down with a serious expression on her face. "Today, we are going to do something very important," she said. "We are going to have circle time just like children do in my classroom, Commander." Thex looked at the decorated stick with suspicion. "What is this stick supposed to do?" "Make magic happen and solve all our problems." His voice had the edge it got when he thought someone was making fun of him. "This is a talking stick," Minji explained patiently. "In my classroom, when children are upset or angry, they sit in a circle like this. The person holding the stick gets to talk about their feelings, and everyone else has to listen without interrupting. No arguing, no shouting, no talking over each other. Just listening." Crystal made a soft musical sound that showed she was interested. "We Nexari have similar traditions. In our culture, when the eldest speaks, the younger ones must remain silent until the wisdom is shared completely." Whisper floated closer to examine the stick. "The ribbons from our worlds make it special," he said quietly. "It shows that all our voices matter equally." "Exactly." Minji smiled. "Now here are the rules. Whoever holds the stick can say anything they want about how they feel, what they fear, what they hope for. The other 2 must listen with respect. When the speaker is finished, they pass the stick to the next person. Everyone gets a turn and everyone gets heard." She picked up the stick and held it carefully. "I will go first to show you how it works." She took a deep breath and began to speak from her heart. "I am scared," she said. "Honestly, I am just a kindergarten teacher from a small planet, and you are leaders of great civilizations. I worry that I am not smart enough or important enough to help you solve this terrible problem. But I also see 3 people who love their families and want to protect them just like the parents of my students do." She passed the stick to Commander Thex, who took it in his large clawed hands. He stared at it for a long moment before speaking. His voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. "I'm tired," he said. The words seemed to surprise him as much as everyone else. "I have been fighting wars for 30 years. I have killed enemies and watched friends die. I became a commander because I thought strength was the only way to protect my people. But strength alone is not working anymore." He held the stick tighter as he continued. "My empire is growing so fast that I cannot keep up. We have millions of new babies every year, and they all need homes and food and safety. I promised them I would make the Vorthak the strongest species in the galaxy. But what if I cannot keep that promise? What if I fail them?" His red eyes dimmed as he spoke about his deepest fears. "I have 3 sons who want to be warriors like me, and a daughter who wants to explore new worlds. I want them to be proud of their father, but I also want them to live in peace. I am tired of sending young soldiers to die for resources we desperately need." He looked at the other 2 leaders. "I know you think we Vorthak are savage destroyers, but we build things too. We build them to last forever because we never want our children to be homeless or hungry again. Every mining station in my picture was designed to create jobs and homes for 1,000 families. Commander Thex passed the stick to Crystal, who held it gently in her energy field. The crystal being began to glow with soft internal light as she prepared to share her truth. I am lonely. She sang in tones that made everyone feel sad. We Nexari live for thousands of years, but there are so few of us left. Most species think we are just pretty rocks that make music. They do not understand that we have feelings and memories and dreams. Her light grew brighter as she continued. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen beautiful worlds destroyed by war and greed. I have tried to share our ancient wisdom, but younger species think old knowledge is useless. They want new technology, not old songs. She gestured toward her artwork on the wall. Those asteroids hold the spirits of my greatest teachers and friends. When other species talk about mining them, it feels like someone wants to destroy my family cemetery. How can I make you understand that some things are more valuable than money or Metal's crystal voice became softer as she revealed her deepest secret. I'm afraid that if we let others mine carelessly, the spirits will disappear forever, and I will be the last Nexari to remember their wisdom. I will be alone with memories that no one else values or understands, but I also see that your people are suffering too. She continued, looking at Thex and whisper, maybe there is a way to honor the dead while helping the living. I have never considered sharing our sacred spaces before, but your pictures show me that you care about more than just taking things. She passed the talking stick to Whisper, who wrapped his gaseous form around it gently. The purple swirls of his body moved slower and sadder than usual. I am dying, he whispered, so quietly that everyone had to lean forward to hear. Every day that passes means more of my people fade away. Our homeworld was beautiful once, with clean air that danced and sang. Now the sky is brown and thick, and our children cannot breathe. He paused, and his gas form seemed to shrink smaller. I have lost 2 children already. My little ones who used to play in the cloud streams and learn to fly in the upper atmosphere. They got sick from the poison air, and there was nothing I could do to save them. The other leaders watched in shock as Whisper's form became even more agitated. Nothing I have tried has worked. The healing machines break down. The medicine does not help, and every day more families lose their young ones. I came here, not because I want to fight, but because fighting seems like the only option left. I see your artwork. He continued, looking at the paintings on the wall. And I understand that you have families too. Commander Thex, your sons and daughter deserve a future. Crystal, your ancestors deserve respect. But my children who are still alive deserve to breathe clean air. Whisper passed the stick back to Minji, but kept talking in his desperate, quiet voice. If we cannot find a solution here, then I will have to go home and watch the rest of my people die. I cannot let that happen. Even if it means fighting a war we cannot win. The room became very quiet as the weight of their shared truths settled around them. For the first time, each leader truly understood what the others were facing. Commander Thex was not a greedy conqueror, but a tired leader trying to provide for his growing people. Crystal was not a selfish mystic, but a lonely guardian trying to preserve ancient wisdom. Whisper was not a desperate aggressor, but a grieving parent trying to save his remaining children. Minji held the talking stick and looked at each of them with the same compassionate expression she used with her students when they shared their problems. Now you have heard. Each other really heard each other, she said gently. You all have the same goal, to protect and care for the people you love. She stood up and walked to their artwork on the wall. Look at your pictures again, but this time, look for ways they could work together instead of ways they conflict, Commander Thex. Your mining stations could be built to respect Crystal's sacred sites. Whisper, your nursery areas could use the safe zones that both mining and ceremonies create. What if, instead of fighting over who gets everything, we figured out how everyone could get what they need most? She suggested. What if we made a schedule like children do in school, taking turns using the playground equipment? The 3 leaders looked at each other with new understanding. The talking stick had done something that months of formal negotiations could not. It had helped them see past their anger and fear, to recognize each other as people who cared deeply about their families and futures. For the first time since the conflict began, they started talking about solutions instead of problems. The fifth day began with something that had never happened before in the 3 years of conflict. Commander Thex, Crystal, and Whisper were all in the meeting room early, and they were talking quietly together instead of shouting at each other. Minji found them looking at their artwork and pointing to different parts while discussing ideas. "Good morning, everyone," she said with a big smile as she set down her bag. "How are you feeling today?" "Different," said Commander Thex in his deep voice. "Yesterday, when we shared our real feelings, something changed inside me. I have not slept this peacefully in years. I dreamed about my children playing instead of fighting wars." Crystal hummed a soft melody that filled the room with gentle music. The talking stick ceremony reminded me of our ancient sharing circles. I had forgotten how good it feels to be truly heard by others, even by those who are different from us. Whisper floated closer to the group. "Last night I sent a message to my homeworld, telling them there might be hope. I have not been able to say those words in a very long time." Minji sat down in her chair and looked at the 3 leaders with pride in her eyes, just like her kindergarten students who learned to work together after sharing their feelings. "Now," she said, pulling out a large piece of paper and some colored pens, "let's make a plan together." She spread the paper on the low table where they could all reach it. "I want each of you to help me draw a map of the Kepler 442 system, but this time we will design it so everyone gets what they need." "Most." Commander Thex leaned forward with interest. "How do we do that? There is only one asteroid belt, and we all want it." "Remember what you learned about sharing in your cultures," Minji said. "We take turns and we divide things fairly. In my classroom, when 2 children want the same toy, we find creative solutions." She drew a simple circle representing the asteroid belt and divided it into sections with dotted lines. "What if the system was split by time and location? Commander Thex, your people could do heavy mining during certain months. Crystal, your people could hold ceremonies during other months. Whisper, your children could use safe areas while the adults work." But Crystal made a worried sound. "What if the mining destroys the spiritual energy of the asteroids before we can perform our rituals?" "Commander?" Thex looked at her artwork and then at his own. "I have an idea," he said slowly. "What if my mining stations were built like temples instead of factories? We Vorthak are excellent builders. We could create beautiful structures that honor your ancestors while also extracting materials." He picked up a pen and started sketching on the shared paper. "Look here," he said, drawing elegant buildings that looked like a mix between mining equipment and sacred shrines. We could mine very carefully, taking only what we need and leaving the most important asteroids untouched for your ceremonies." Crystal light grew brighter with excitement. "You would do that for us, but that would be much more expensive and slower than regular mining. My people have always built things to last forever." "Commander," Thex replied, "building something beautiful and respectful is worth the extra cost. If it means peace for our children, then it is worth any price." Whisper swirled closer to the paper. "I can help too," he said quietly. "Flothari are experts at working in dangerous atmospheres. We could provide safety systems for both mining and ceremonies. Our gas forms can detect problems that solid beings might miss." He began adding his own drawings to the plan, showing how Flothari could live and work safely throughout the asteroid belt. "My people could maintain the air systems and early warning networks. We could be the caretakers of the whole system." Crystal studied the growing plan with wonder. "This could actually work," she sang. "The sacred sites would be protected, the mining would be clean and safe, and the Flothari children would have clean space to grow." Minji watched as the 3 former enemies worked together to solve their shared problem. Each one was contributing their species' unique strengths instead of fighting over their differences. It was exactly like watching her kindergarten. Students learned to build something together after sharing their toys. Over the next several hours, they created a detailed plan. The Vorthak would build beautiful mining stations that looked like monuments to honor the Nexari ancestors. The Nexari would provide ancient songs and ceremonies that helped workers feel calm and focused. The Flothari would manage all the life support systems and serve as neutral peacekeepers between the other groups. The asteroid belt would be divided into 3 zones. Sacred zones where only Nexari ceremonies could happen, mining zones where Vorthak could extract materials using respectful methods, and living zones where Flothari families could raise their children safely. away from the poisoned air of their homeworld. They also created a schedule that rotated every few months. During mining season, the Vorthak would work, while Flothari provided support and safety monitoring. During ceremony season, the Nexari would hold their rituals, while the other species helped maintain respectful quiet. During family season, young Flothari would play and learn, while Vorthak and Nexari provided protection and education. When they finished their plan, all three leaders sat back and looked at what they had created. Together, it was more complex than anything one species could have built alone, but it was also more beautiful and fair. "This is better than anything I imagined," said Commander Thex. "My people will be proud to build something this magnificent instead of just taking resources by force." Crystal sang a joyful song that made the walls shimmer with rainbow colors. "Our ancestors would approve of this plan. It honors the past while helping the future." Whisper swirled with happy excitement. "My children will grow up breathing clean air and learning from two great civilizations. This is the miracle I prayed for." 6 months later, the Kepler 442 Accords were signed in a ceremony that was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds watched in amazement as three species who had been bitter enemies signed a peace treaty that gave everyone what they needed. The signing ceremony took place in the same small meeting room where Minji had worked her magic. The three leaders sat in their tiny chairs surrounded by colorful artwork and empty snack containers. They signed their agreement with the same talking stick they had used to share their deepest fears. But the real miracle was what happened after the signing word spread quickly through the galaxy about the human kindergarten teacher who had solved an impossible conflict. Suddenly, every major dispute wanted a human negotiator. Not the fancy diplomats with university degrees, but the patient teachers who spent their days helping children learn to share. The Galactic Council created the Human Mediation Corps and began recruiting kindergarten teachers from Earth. Soman, who had taught 4-year-olds for 20 years, helped end a trade war between merchant guilds by having the leaders draw pictures of their ideal marketplace together. Hyunsik, who was famous for calming down difficult children, resolved a border dispute between 3 neighboring systems by teaching their military commanders how to play cooperative games instead of competitive ones. Yunji, who specialized in helping shy children make friends, brought together 2 species who had never spoken to each other before by organizing art projects, where they created beautiful things. As a team, within 2 years, human kindergarten teachers were working on diplomatic missions throughout the galaxy. The most powerful military commanders in known space were sitting in tiny chairs eating snacks and learning to take turns talking. Other species started copying human methods. Alien diplomats began using talking sticks and art therapy and snack time in their own negotiations. The techniques that worked on 5-year-old humans turned out to work just as well on ancient crystalline beings and gas creatures and warrior reptiles. The secret, as Minji explained to anyone who asked, was simple. Conflict usually comes from fear, misunderstanding, or unmet needs. When you create a safe space where everyone feels heard and cared for, even the most stubborn beings can learn to work together. The galaxy was finally at peace, and it was all because humans understood something that other species had forgotten. Whether you were a child learning to share toys or an alien species fighting over resources, the basic needs were the same: to feel safe, understood, and respected. Minji returned to Earth as the most famous kindergarten teacher in galactic history, but she went back to her classroom because that was where she was happiest. Every day she taught new 5-year-olds how to share and be kind, knowing that those same lessons were keeping peace among the stars. On the 3rd morning, Minji arrived at the meeting room, carrying several large boxes that clinked and rattled as she walked. The 3 alien leaders were already there, sitting in their small chairs and looking much more relaxed than they had 2 days ago. They had started arriving early because they actually enjoyed these strange meetings. "What do you have there?" Human teacher asked Crystal as her crystalline body sparkled with curiosity. The musical tones in her voice were soft and pleasant. Instead of the harsh, angry sounds she had made before, Minji set the boxes on the floor and opened them with the excitement of a child opening birthday presents. Inside were art supplies of every kind imaginable: crayons and paints and brushes and clay and papers of different colors and sizes. She had even brought special materials designed for each alien species. "Today we are going to make pictures," she announced with a big smile. On her face, I want each of you to draw or build or create something that shows what you really want from the Kepler 442 system. Don't think about politics or laws or who deserves what. Just show me your dream, Commander. Thex looked at the art supplies like they might explode. His warrior training had not included finger, painting, or crayon drawing. This is foolish, he grumbled. I am a military commander, not an artist. My claws are made for fighting, not for holding tiny drawing tools. But Minji had dealt with reluctant students before. She picked up a thick crayon and showed him how to hold it in his massive clawed hand. See, you can make beautiful things with those strong hands, just like my student Deho, who thought he was too tough for art class until he discovered he loved making pictures of spaceships. Crystal was more interested. She had always been drawn to beautiful things, and creating art was part of Nexari culture. But she had never used primitive materials like crayons and paint before. Her people made art with light and sound and crystal formations. These human tools seem very simple, she said. Simple can be wonderful, Minji replied. Sometimes the best ideas come when we use basic tools that make us think in new ways. My student Soyoung makes the most amazing drawings with just a pencil and paper whisper, floated down to examine the special gas-reactive paints that Minji had ordered just for him. These change color when I move through them, he said with wonder in his quiet voice. How did you know such things existed? I asked around and did research. Minji said, just like I do when I want to help a student express themselves. Everyone needs different tools to show their ideas. Slowly, the three leaders began to work. Commander Thex picked up a black crayon and started drawing on a large piece of paper. His picture was all sharp lines and geometric shapes. He drew the Kepler 442 system with huge mining stations that looked like Vorthak warships. The stations had giant mechanical arms that reached out to grab asteroids and pull them apart. As he started talking about his vision. The Vorthak needed resources to build new colonies for their growing population. He wanted efficient mining operations that could extract materials quickly and safely. He drew happy Vorthak families living in new cities built with metals from the asteroids. My people have always been builders, he said as his crayon moved across the paper. We build ships and stations and homes that last for centuries. When we take resources, we use every bit of them. Nothing gets wasted. We are not destroyers like other species think we are builders. Crystal began creating something completely different. She used flowing paints that seemed to move and dance on the paper. Her picture showed the asteroids connected by streams of light that looked like musical notes. The whole system became part of a vast cosmic song with each rock playing its own part in a beautiful symphony. She sang softly as she painted, and her voice made the colors on the paper shimmer and glow to my people. These asteroids are not just rocks, she explained. They are the final resting place of our greatest heroes who died in ancient battles. The minerals inside have absorbed their spirits and memories. Her painting showed Nexari pilgrims traveling to the system to sing with the spirit rocks. She painted ceremonies where her people would touch the asteroids and hear the voices of their ancestors. The mining she drew was gentle and respectful, taking only small amounts while leaving the spiritual essence intact. We do not need to strip mine everything, she said as she added more flowing lines to her picture. We only need enough materials to maintain our sacred sites and keep our culture alive. We could share the system if others would respect what is holy to us. Whisper was creating the most amazing art of all. He moved through the gas-reactive paints like a dancer, and everywhere he went, colors bloomed and swirled. His picture showed Flothari children playing in the asteroid fields, floating between the rocks in games that looked like three-dimensional tag. His painting was full of movement and joy. It showed the asteroids as a playground where young Flothari could practice flying in open space away from the poisoned atmosphere of their homeworld. He painted mining stations that looked like flowers with the Flothari living and working inside them safely. Our children are dying on our homeworld, he said as he swirled through more paint, creating beautiful patterns. The air is too thick and toxic for their developing bodies. They need clean space to grow and learn. These asteroids could be perfect nurseries for our young ones. He painted Flothari families living peacefully in the asteroid belt with mining operations that used the same gases the Flothari needed to survive. His vision showed a symbiotic relationship, where the mining process actually created better living conditions for his people. When all three finished their artwork, Minji hung the pictures on the wall side by side. The room became quiet as each leader looked at the other's creations. For the first time they were seeing what their enemies actually wanted, instead of what they feared they wanted. "Look at these beautiful pictures," Minji said with genuine admiration in her voice. "Each one shows something important and special. Commander Thex, your people are builders who want to create good homes for their families. Crystal, your people are guardians who want to protect sacred memories. Whisper, your people are parents who want to save their children." She walked from picture to picture, pointing out details that showed the hopes and dreams behind each vision. None of these pictures show greed or destruction. She continued, "They all show love. Love for family, love for culture, love for the future." The three aliens stared at their artwork and then at each other. Commander Thex had always thought the Nexari were selfish mystics who cared more about dead rocks than living people. But Crystal's painting showed deep spiritual connection and respect for the past. Crystal had believed the Vorthak were mindless destroyers who consumed everything in their path. But Thek's drawing showed careful planning and a desire to build lasting things for future generations. Whisper had assumed both species were greedy conquerors who would never understand desperate need. But both pictures showed beings who cared deeply about their people's survival and happiness. "What if," Minji said gently, as she looked at all three pictures, "what if there was enough space and resources for everyone to get what they really need? What if instead of fighting over the asteroids, you could find ways to share them?" She pointed to different parts of each picture. "Look how Commander Thek's mining stations could provide the materials Crystal needs for her sacred sites, and see how Whisper's nursery areas could coexist with both mining and ceremonies." For the first time since the conflict began, the three leaders started to see possibilities instead of problems. They looked at their art and realized that their dreams were not as impossible as they had thought. Maybe there really was a way for everyone to win. The magic of art had done what months of formal diplomacy could not. It had helped them see past their fears and anger to understand what they all really wanted: a safe future for the people they loved.